taking like the hints from the masters, obviously. We're going to talk about the psychology part of this. Dr. Janine Hubbard is a registered psychologist that's based in St. John's, Newfoundland. Welcome to Radio Noon.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. My goodness, my heart started racing just hearing that theme song.
I was going to ask you, what is it that like still sticks with you from Jaws when you've watched it?
I was going to say, I think part of it was just the pervasiveness, the pop culture-ness of it, so that even if people hadn't watched it, they'd certainly heard of it, or they'd been to Universal Studios and, gone on the ride. So there were a whole lot of generations that may have never actually seen the movie, at least not, in its entity, but they're still aware of the impact. And that's just fascinating.
Why do you think that the movie was so scary?
I think it was lovely dumb luck from these stories because the fact that they had all the technical issues. We are far more afraid of what our imaginations create. Even if we have an idea of what, maybe the monster, quote unquote, is going to look like when we can't see it. That's that fear of the dark. That's that fear of the unknown. Because if we can see something, then we can kind of conceptualize in our mind, oh, well, this is how I deal with it. When we can't see it, when it's unknown, when it's in the dark, that just ramps up all of those fears and makes it feel, far less in control of the situation.
I mean, some of this isn't rational. Some of the people that we spoke to earlier in the show said that, they were scared of taking a bath afterwards, that they didn't want to go in the lake where clearly there's no sharks. Like lots of other things where it's like people are just kind of freaked out about thinking about what could be there. Tell us a little bit about, that kind of part of it where it isn't even rational. Like despite people saying to you, well, that's impossible for a shark to come up, the drain of the bathtub.
Right. Well, absolutely. And, with a lot of worries, we talk about possible versus probable. And in this case, no, there is not going to be a great white shark come out at you from, in the lake you're swimming in. However, there might be some weeds. There might be a fish that touches your foot and your brain then just goes, and builds it up, even though logically that that's probably not the case. And I think, to be fair, there's also a little bit of that shared experience, especially in the early years. That's also one of the reasons something like this is so successful, is because we often go with somebody, maybe somebody we can snuggle up with, because, all those adrenaline as it's building, and then you get those endorphins, you get that great big rush of relief, and everybody goes, oh, okay, it's going to be all right. And then there's a, scare, or there's a startle, but experiencing that as a group just really enhances the intensity of all of those emotions. So certainly nationwide or North American-wide, that was such a shared experience for so many people. You can appreciate why, even if you hadn't experienced it yourself, you almost kind of wanted to feel like you were part of it.
Yeah, we forget about kind of seeing movies in that way because we're so used to seeing movies now from the comfort of our own homes, and having people kind of screaming along with you is a totally different experience.
Oh, for sure. And like I say, I think that added to the experience in a way that you might not see today. I guess the other thing is, there's no question, we just have this universal fascination, with underwater creatures of all sorts, but sharks in particular, that, continues to this day. There's a silly Netflix reality series I wound up binging on all weekend, because they're fascinating creatures. And they're dark and they're mysterious and they look ancient, and something about, they appear out of nowhere. All of those things are so fascinating to a lot of us. Unfortunately, we know it led to a lot of stigma and a lot of overhunting, and I think, but fortunately now kind of doing a much better understanding. But yeah, the idea that, they're out there. Listen, I'm in St. John's. When people go cod fishing, it might not be a great white, but a lot of people pull up their cod and it's half a fish. And that means there has been a shark that's enjoyed the other half. We have a great white named Lydia who gets tracked coming up to our shores every year.
Oh, wow.
So they're out there. So it actually is. And I think that's the other powerful part of it, is no matter how remote a possibility it is, I see something like, we have a great white that treks to the oceans by our province.
I'm going to read you a text because I think it's interesting and it's going to kind of tie into what I have to ask you next. So the text messenger said, I had a friend who saw Jaws when it first came out. He really enjoyed it, so he decided to take his girlfriend to it. So he told me that he thought it'd be really fun to scare her. So when the head rolls out of the hole in the boat, he turned to her and roared at her. They were holding hands, and he claimed that she squeezed his so hard he thought the bones were breaking. The texter says, I think he got what he deserved. That moment is scary enough. Thanks very much for that text. I mean, why is it that people kind of gravitate towards these scary movies? I mean, what's happening to our brains when we watch a movie like Jaws? I'm going to ask you, Justine, what do you think happens in our brain when we're thinking about these films?
I think it's clearly that it's a type of film that does hit these very primal feelings that we can't make sense of. And even today, people go to the movies less. One of I think the undercurrents of this conversation is that these collective experiences are so much more unusual. But realistically speaking, horror movies maintain an incredible popularity in the cinema. I think that it's fun to watch it at home on a dark, stormy night, but at the end of the day, we want to be kind of part of this shared experience. And I know that there's been even studies when the pandemic happened where they looked at people who watch a huge amount of horror movies, and apparently they coped better. And there's a psychology of you're kind of approaching these fears, these anxieties within a controlled environment. Kind of what she was saying is we want to be in control. And a horror movie allows us to experience that fear in a controlled way. You could leave. The movie ends. It's not real.
You can turn it off. You can pause it. Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe if you're at home.
Exactly. So I think that that's a large part of it.
I mean, you see a lot of horror films. This is something that you are drawn to, you like. I mean, is it the adrenaline part of it as well? That's also kind of getting people to get into the theater? They like that feeling?
I think so. I mean, even the action films, whatever, I think that we're talking about a way of kind of spiking that adrenaline. We're looking for excitement. And it's being on a roller coaster. I know Martin Scorsese got in big trouble for saying that Marvel movies is a roller coaster ride, and people felt that was insulting. I think maybe he intended it to be slightly, but I don't think he's wrong. I think that is the appeal, that people want to get these highs, these lows. They want to go, ooh, they want to go, ah, they want to be scared. They want to laugh. They want to be really have their emotions peaked, activated. And I think horror movies is maybe the most satisfying of those emotions. And even if it's a really bad horror movie, if it scares you a little bit, you feel like you kind of won. You got what you wanted.
I'm just going to ask you a very quick question to end the show, but do you think that Jaws in 25 years people are still going to be talking about it?